Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and we have got some updates for the car market. Before we get into this video though, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And some of the information provided in today's video comes from Cox Automotive. Let's get into it. So as usual, let's start with the numbers and then talk about what this means for the car market. So Cox Automotive estimates that the sales month of March is going to be a pretty solid month with volume around 1.45 million units, which is a 4.5% increase from last year and a 14.4% increase from February last month. Now, something to note, March is always better than February in the car business when it comes to volume. First off, March has more selling days compared to February. Even though we had a leap year this year, which did help out February a little bit, March still has more selling days overall. Now, the next thing is going to be where this puts the car market, 15.5 million unit pace when it comes to sales. Now, that's up from last year's pace with March's numbers of 14.9 million units, but it's down from last month's 15.8 million unit range. And so this shows that new vehicle sales volume is still on the rise. But you have to remember from prior videos where the new car market is at when it comes to inventory levels. Inventory levels have actually come down slightly, but they're still the highest that they have been since, basically the beginning of the pandemic at this point when you look at the numbers. And so it really does put the new car market in an interesting place. And so I want to talk about what I see happening moving forward with the new car market based on the current trends, and then also based on some anecdotes in the real world. So first off, when it comes to trends, well, the trend is that the new car market is still not going to be as big as it was prior to the pandemic when it comes to overall sales volume. And so this is a different market for automakers to navigate, right? The pre-pandemic market was a market of over 17 million units. That's more than enough volume for everyone to build a bunch of cars. But at 15.5 million units, if we get there this year, that's a much smaller market. Again, 1.5 million units, it's just a number, right? It's just a number, but you have to think about it from this perspective. Toyota, usually sells, over 1 million cars per year in the US market. And so that 1.5 million units, that would be the equivalent of like getting rid of Toyota in the US market. So when you look at it from that perspective, or if you look at it from, the truck world perspective, Ram usually sells about 500,000 trucks per year in the US market. So get rid of Ram times 3, and that gives you kind of an idea of how big of a volume loss that is. Like, that's enough volume to literally knock out multiple automakers when it comes to sales. And so, yeah, this is a big detriment to automakers when it comes to, selling a lot of cars. But when you look at it from a profit perspective, automakers are still doing pretty well because they're still able to sell cars for quite a bit more than what they sold them for prior to the pandemic. And, maybe that's what they want moving forward. And so the general trend is that the car market is still going to be small compared to what we saw in the past. Now, when it comes to anecdotes, I think we're going to start seeing even more discounts on more expensive cars outside of the high demand stuff. There are certain vehicles that are in higher price ranges which are still being scooped up quite readily. So you can't really just put a broad category, but there are some categories. So one would be work trucks, right? So trucks that businesses are using, like diesel trucks, for example, those are still selling quite well because businesses can use those to earn revenue, and they just have to bite the bullet when it comes to pricing on these because they need them to continue to do business. And then there are other cars that, depending on if that car is the flavor of the week with rich people, they might be bought up as well. But outside of the flavor of the week cars, and outside of work trucks, diesel trucks to be more specific, other more expensive cars are just not selling. They're not selling that well whatsoever. And this is pretty much across the board. I'm starting to see pretty big incentives from a lot of luxury car automakers on the more quote unquote normal luxury cars that are still, more expensive vehicles, especially when you compare it to the average new car. And so I think we're going to continue to see this trend of bigger and bigger discounts and incentives on these vehicles because people just simply cannot afford them anymore. And speaking of affordability, affordable cars seem to be the biggest mover in this market. Again, anecdotally, what dealers are telling me is they're seeing more and more people come in looking for affordable cars. And when I say affordable, I'm talking about cars that are sub $20,000, sub $25,000, sub $30,000 for sure. Like $30,000 is the roof for most of these buyers. And the new car market just doesn't have that anymore. There's, I think, fewer than like 9 models that have an MSRP of under $25,000. And so you have this market that seems to be growing in terms of demand, but the automakers don't want to meet that demand because the profitability with those models is just not there. The automakers are so focused on profits rather than trying to meet buyer demand. And so I think we're going to see tightening in that market. We're going to see those cars continue to sell out within that market, that, you know, the affordable models. At the same time that we're going to see these less affordable cars not sell out, and they're going to continue to get bigger and bigger discounts. So it's really going to be a split market. And, you know, hopefully automakers will eventually see the writing on the wall and realize, like, hey, if we start building more affordable vehicles, then we'll sell more vehicles. And, you know, something that I just don't hear from automakers anymore that I used to in the past is that the more affordable cars, although not the most profitable, are great to bring people into the brand, right? You build a car that maybe you don't make that much money on it, but you get that person in when they're in their, you know, late teens, early 20s. You get that person into your brand and then they buy from you for the rest of their life. And so maybe when they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s where they have a little bit more income, then they buy your more expensive models where there's more profit. But it seems like automakers, they're so focused on profit, they kind of forget some of those, you know, things that they used to do in the past that actually helped them to be successful. So that's going to sum things up for today's video. Let me know what you think about this market situation within the new car market. I'll see you.